the bad man of World Championship Wrestling, and I'm here to tell you, listen to the American Adversaries. They may be some bad men, but they're great guys.
All right, welcome back to the show, folks. You are listening to the American Adversaries Drive Time Prime Time Show. We have Abe Katsman coming to us live from Jerusalem tonight, and he's reporting on the unrest that seems to be growing over there in Israel and around Israel, the West Bank in particular, and some horrific murders that have been committed by some terrorists. And if I'm not mistaken, they're being held up as heroes. We'll get Abe to tell us in here in just a minute, but you can be a part of the conversation too. We're going to get to Al's question here in a minute for Abe, but the number is 407-774-8255. But Colonel Danny McKnight has a question to start off with, Abe. So, Colonel.
Abe, how you doing?
Great, thanks.
Hey, good to hear your voice again. I sort of look at this thing, and I'm trying to figure out the scorecard. I'm trying to figure out, like, who's doing what over there to who. I mean, we've got this thing, now that we're lovey-dovey with Iran all of a sudden, which sort of stuns me in itself, that we would ever go there, but obviously our president has done that. So do you think Iran has a play in a lot of the stuff that's ended up being created for everybody there in Israel?
It's very possible. They certainly like to stir things up against Israel. They've been very active in, they work directly with Hezbollah, and Hezbollah, well, until it turned its attention to fighting in Syria, their reason for existence was really to threaten Israel. And of course, they also support Hamas, even though they're of rival religious stripes, but they nevertheless support Hamas. And they have spoken out about how that the Palestinians in the West Bank should rise up. I don't know that there are reports of any direct aid coming in. I think Israel might have some degree of control over that, or if it were happening, we'd probably be reading about it.
Yeah, and it probably would not be direct. I believe sometimes the indirect aid and support you get from outsiders is sometimes most dangerous of all, because it is indirect. It's not something they want people to know, but sometimes it sure does foster things within. And I know that Iran and Israel are not exactly buddy-buddy.
To put it mildly.
To put it mildly, correct, yeah. Well, thanks, Abe. It just has bothered me about that relationship with Iran now, and was that possibly flowing over and having an impact in Israel. And thank you for your answer.
All right.
Yeah, I think it's always good to look at Iran when you're lining up the suspects for what it is that's going on. Iran should always be in the lineup.
Well, after all, our president wanted Iran to be a successful regional player, right? Let's go. All right, let's go to Al and his question for Abe. Al, thank you for calling. We appreciate you being out there.
Hey, God bless you guys as usual.
Thank you.
Question for Abe, I guess. I'm not a long time listener, maybe about a year. I consider that a long time.
Thank you.
And I don't know if I've ever heard the question answered or if he's ever said it, but I'm wondering, Abe, I know that you said you were Jewish, and I'm wondering if you were a Messianic Jew or an Orthodox Jew.
I am an Orthodox Jew, an observant Jew.
Okay.
And Messianic, no.
Okay. And I'm wondering from, like, I guess kind of what Colonel McKnight was saying. I mean, does it from the demographic standpoint, are there more Messianic versus Orthodox, and does it even matter to Muslims, I guess, for a Jew whether they believe in Jesus or not, considering that the Muslims don't? Is the fight all about the land, or is it actually, something to do with religion, or in that aspect, I guess, better understanding in that?
Well, there's a small Messianic presence here in Israel. It really isn't that large. There is a large Christian community. A relatively large, by comparison, Christian community. In terms of the Palestinians against the Israelis, that has, it does have a lot to do with religion, but it doesn't matter what brand of Jew it is, they seem to be, non-discriminatory when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Right, and I meant that in correlation with what Colonel McKnight was asking, with if they're Shiites or Shiites or Sunni. I'm sorry, tongue twisted there. But I mean, you kind of get the idea. I was kind of going with it, and I was just wondering if there was any other insight maybe that could. I don't think I've ever heard that side of the story, or is it, like you said, is it just all about the land and that's all they care about?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think that it is what seems to be more important than the religious orientation of the Israelis is the religious orientation of the Muslims.
Right.
Especially those who are particularly religious. I mean, we see this from Iran. They say it straight out that Israel doesn't belong here. This is supposed to be Arab land or Muslim land, and once it's been Muslim land, it cannot revert to being non-Muslim land.
Right.
So they have a real theological problem with the very existence of Israel in the Middle East.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, anybody other than Muslim, certainly they have a certain particular hatred for Jews, but anybody that's an infidel, they're going to be an enemy of. So, well, thanks for the question, Al. I appreciate you being out there. One thing that perplexes the Colonel and I, Abe, is what's going on with Jordan? What's going on with the King of Jordan? Because he's normally, I don't know if neutral is the right word, but he certainly hasn't been antagonistic towards Israel.
Yeah, suddenly there are reports that he won't take Prime Minister Netanyahu's phone calls. He's made a couple of statements very critical of Israel's handling of the areas on the Temple Mount. I don't know exactly what it is that's going on, if he's being pressured from within, if he's being pressured by perhaps by some of the other Arab countries. I really don't know what's behind it. I know that this happens every so often. There's a large, very anti-Israel contingent in Jordan, and I think that sometimes he feels he has to play to that, I think for political reasons. But I don't know, I really don't get what it is that why he's been so critical suddenly.
Okay. By the way, folks, we're speaking with Abe Katsman. He's coming to us live from Jerusalem. If you have a question like Al, 407-774-8255 is the number. Yeah, a number of weeks ago, you told us about, before it was ever reported in the media here, at least before I saw it, that Prime Minister Netanyahu had gone to Russia to speak to Vladimir Putin. Do you think that Putin kind of gave him a heads up, or do you think that there was an understanding that if Putin does something in Syria, that as long as the border is secure, that Israel is not going to have a problem with that?
I think they came to some kind of understanding. I don't think that Prime Minister Netanyahu is happy with the Russian presence in Syria, but I think that he got some kind of commitment from Putin that Israel would be able to operate in the skies of Syria when necessary. And that Israel wasn't going to mess with whatever it is that Russia is doing, and Russia is not going to mess with Israel when Israel feels that it has to defend itself or do something proactive. I don't know to what degree there's any kind of coordination, but it's going to be a problem, especially with the anti-aircraft systems that Russia is putting into Syria. Israel needs some room to operate, and the whole country is going to be covered by these systems.
All right, Abe, we were speaking a little bit off air, Colonel and I were, about the Prime Minister's speech, and Colonel, you wanted to say some words about the speech that Prime Minister Netanyahu gave in front of the UN last week.
I believe that one of the things that bothered me was I think he almost issued a challenge in a way to our president in terms of what he's not doing and everything. How do you see that over there from your perspective in terms of his speech, that he's not kind and gentle, which I love that about him. He's pretty straightforward. And I think he really did sort of throw a challenge out there that there's not anything being done by our country. We'll put it that way, since we have the president in charge, that really is in any way favorable towards Israel. Does that seem like what it is to you over there?
Yeah, I think his focus was really more on the rest of the world, including America, for letting this Iran deal go through, and then for running to embrace Iran. He was very critical of it. He went on and on. I mean, he's spoken before about what a mistake this is, and but he said that Iran is a dark theocracy that conquers its neighbors, and he said that that the world is deluding itself if they think that that suddenly Iran is going to be pacified because of this deal. And he kind of chastised the whole body there, and then said that all that they've gotten out of the United Nations is silence. And then he stopped speaking for about 40 seconds.
Yeah, it was
kind of stared at everybody.
Yep.
And
that was
continued again.
Yeah, the most powerful, I think, moment of the speech was when he wasn't talking, but he stared the whole room down. It looked as though he was looking into the eyes of each and every person in the audience. Unfortunately, there was no American delegation in the audience. How did that go over in Israel?
That was not received well here. I mean, as it is, a good chunk of the assembly walks out of the room whenever
right.
an Israeli speaks, certainly whenever the Israeli leader does. But to suddenly have to, that of all times to suddenly call out John Kerry and Samantha Power on urgent business, supposedly they were on some kind of call with the president at the time and couldn't be there.
Right.
I think everybody in Israel looks at this as just another petty slap by the Obama administration, which seems to be almost juvenile in the way that it shows its disdain for Prime Minister Netanyahu.
I'm glad you said it that way. I agree with everything you just said. And as an American, okay, it doesn't have anything to do with whether I'm Christian, whether I'm Jewish. It does nothing. That is a slap in the face of the United States of America, and I think it is so wrong that that's what we do to what I considered always, if I had somebody I needed to fight beside me, I knew where I wanted to get them from, and they were coming from Israel. And what an amazing slap in the face that is, and I'm so glad you put it so perfectly.
Well, yeah, I think that's the feeling here. People didn't spend a lot of time dwelling on the speech because of the terror attacks and the riots. So there were new headlines pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. Well, we certainly will be praying for you, Abe, and I wish I could say that there will be a lull, hopefully, in the violence soon, but unfortunately, it sounds like that the worst may be yet to come. So we are definitely going to be praying and praying hard for you in particular and Israel in general, that you will be protected and that this thing will flame out soon in Israel's favor.